I'd only lived in Oak Ridge Estates for 6 weeks when the war began. It started with a notice taped to my front door, flapping like a scarlet flag in the wind. The paper was bright pink, the font was Comic Sans, and the tone imperious. Your vehicle violates HOA Regulation 4.3.2. No off-road, military style, or non-standard vehicles may be parked in driveways visible from the street. You have 72 hours to comply. The vehicle in question? My Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. Olive green. Black hardtop. Winch on the front. A subtle American flag decal on the side. I'd bought it after retiring from the Army. Part nostalgia, part practicality. To me, it was a beautiful machine. To Oak Ridge HOA, it was apparently a menace. I stood there for a moment, gripping the paper in disbelief, until my neighbor, a wiry man with a salt and pepper beard, emerged from behind a hedge. "You've been Karen'd," he muttered, almost apologetically. "Excuse me?" "Karen Whitmore," he said, jerking his thumb down the street. HOA president. Been running the board for 8 years straight. Nothing gets past her. I glanced at her house, third on the right. Perfectly trimmed hedges, red geraniums, and a yard sign that read, "Pride and Order. Order and Pride." I should have known then. 2 days later, another notice arrived, this time with a fine, $150 for noncompliance. That night, I attended the HOA meeting. It was held in the community clubhouse, a beige box of a building that smelled faintly of lemon wipes and old carpet. Folding chairs were set in precise rows. The mood was antiseptic. Karen sat at the head of the table. Early 50s, silver blonde bob, pressed blouse tucked into khakis, posture rigid. She clutched a clipboard like it was a gavel. "Name?" she asked without looking up. "Caleb Harlan. Lot 17. About my Jeep." Karen's eyes narrowed with theatrical weariness. "Yes, I've seen it. It's conspicuous. It's parked in my driveway." She raised a hand. "The community has standards. The bylaws are clear. It's a clean, legal vehicle. No oil leaks. No loud music. No rust." "It looks aggressive," she said. "We don't want the neighborhood to resemble a used car lot or a paramilitary training ground." I laughed once. It slipped out. She didn't. The board voted on the regulation years ago. It passed with a clear majority. "Can I see the minutes from that meeting?" Karen pursed her lips. "You're welcome to submit a formal request." I scanned the room. A few board members exchanged glances. A younger man, maybe early 30s, wearing a faded Semper Fi ball cap, tilted his head and gave me a look. Sympathy? Or caution? "Look," I said, trying diplomacy. "I just moved in. I'm not trying to cause waves. I served 20 years in Army aviation. This Jeep has been with me across deserts and mountains. It's more than a vehicle, it's part of my story." Karen blinked slowly. "This is a neighborhood, Mr. Harlan, not a biography." The motion to uphold the fine passed, 3-2. I left that meeting with clenched fists and a cold pit in my stomach. Not just because I'd lost, but because I recognized the type. I'd seen it before, halfway across the world in dusty command tents, people who thrived on control, not leadership. Karen Whitmore didn't just enforce rules. She weaponized them. That night, I moved the Jeep into my garage. Not because I was beaten, but because I was thinking. And when I think, I plan. I sat at my workbench, beneath a wall of old military patches and aviation photos, and stared at a dusty binder labeled N706H, Bell OH, 58 Kiowa. I hadn't touched it in years. But the idea came together fast. For the next 2 weeks, I became invisible. Karen took my Jeep's absence as victory. Each morning, she strutted past my driveway in her pink tracksuit, leash in one hand, HOA citation clipboard in the other. Her yappy Pomeranian, Muffin, barked triumphantly at my garage door like it had conquered foreign soil. I gave her a friendly wave from the porch. She waved back, tight-lipped, smug. She thought the war was over. It had barely begun. Down in my basement workshop, I dusted off the binder, pried open old crates, and unpacked my plan piece by piece. The helicopter, my Kiowa, wasn't a decoration. It was fully operational. I'd bought her at auction after retiring, restored her with my own hands. She sat in a private hangar 20 minutes outside Oak Ridge, registered, insured, and flight-ready. And most importantly, legal. I spent my days updating flight logs, checking weather patterns, coordinating with the FAA, and studying our HOA bylaws with military precision. Not once did the word helicopter appear. No mention of aircraft, helipads, or aerial vehicle restrictions. Karen had ruled with assumptions, not foresight. That Saturday, the timing was perfect. The HOA's annual spring brunch, an event Karen ran like a royal garden party, was in full swing on the neighborhood green. White tents, pastel banners, classical music piping from hidden speakers. Tables lined with deviled eggs, cucumber sandwiches, and mimosas balanced on lace doilies. Karen stood near the mimosa bar, chatting with her inner circle of clipboard commandos. At 10:53 a.m., a low hum rolled across the blue sky. Children pointed. Parents shaded their eyes. Distant at first, then louder. By the time they saw the silhouette cresting the tree line, the Kiowa's rotor blades were slicing the air like a buzzsaw of defiance. I approached from the south, just under the noise threshold, smooth and steady. I circled once, slow, deliberate, then descended into my backyard with a textbook hover. The wind whipped through the brunch like a hurricane of disbelief. Plastic utensils spiraled skyward. Muffin yelped and bolted. Tables rattled. A few drinks spilled. One folding chair toppled. I landed. Soft. Precise. Legal. Then I stepped out, flight suit zipped, helmet under arm, aviators in place. Karen stood frozen mid-sip, mouth open. Her mimosa glass trembled in her fingers. I walked to the sidewalk and raised my voice just enough to carry over the stunned silence. Since my Jeep violated neighborhood aesthetics, I figured I'd find something more subtle. A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. Cameras came out. Kids cheered. Karen stormed across the lawn, face flushed like a ripened tomato. "You cannot land a helicopter here," she shouted. "I just did. This is outrageous. It's unsafe. It's disruptive." I handed her a neat stack of papers. FAA clearance, airworthiness certificate, flight plan, HOA regulations. Everything's filed and legal. No regulations violated. She rifled through the pages, jaw twitching. There's no helipad. There's no permit. There's also no rule against it. You banned my Jeep. This is my new ride. Neighbors had gathered now. Some clapped. A few laughed. One man whispered, "This guy's my hero." Karen sputtered, flipping through the papers like they might magically invalidate themselves. "This isn't over, Mr. Harlan," she hissed. "Didn't think it was." I turned and walked back to the chopper, leaving her seething on the sidewalk. That night, a blurry photo of me stepping out of the helicopter, Karen in the background mid-scream, made the rounds on the neighborhood Facebook group. It racked up dozens of laughing reacts and comments like, "Finally someone stood up to her. Can we elect this guy HOA president?" But I wasn't celebrating. I knew Karen. She didn't take defeat lightly. The battle lines had shifted. Now it was war. By Monday morning, Karen had declared a state of bureaucratic emergency. 3 new citations arrived on my doorstep, each more absurd than the last. Violation 7.4.1, excessive noise pollution. Violation 9.2.3, unauthorized use of airspace above HOA property. Violation 1.1.9, intimidating behavior by use of military equipment. I half expected the next one to say, Violation 13.0.0, making the HOA look stupid in public. I tossed them onto the growing pile on my kitchen counter. They weren't enforceable, just Karen flexing what little authority she had left. Still, I knew better than to underestimate someone like her. A wounded ego with a title is a dangerous thing. That evening, I went for a walk. Not a tactical recon, just fresh air. The sky was clear, the scent of cut grass lingered, and I was starting to believe maybe I'd made my point. Maybe the spectacle of the helicopter would cool her off. I should have known better. 2 blocks down, I noticed something strange. A city utility van parked near my home. No logos. Just white with a magnet sign that read, Oak Ridge Environmental Compliance. 2 men in reflective vests stood in my yard, photographing the chopper through the fence. I approached casually. Evening, gentlemen. Something I can help with. The older one, clipboard in hand, jumped. Just following up on a report. Noise and emissions complaint. Funny. The FAA didn't mention any such report. The younger one shifted uncomfortably. We were just told to inspect. I looked at the clipboard. No official seal. The paperwork looked homemade. You from a city? The older man paused. We're contracted. Temporary assignment. I smiled. Well, as the property owner, I'm asking you to leave. And if you'd like to return, bring real credentials and a court order. They left without protest. I watched them drive 2 blocks and pull into Karen's driveway. Of course. By Wednesday, she'd escalated. She circulated a petition demanding a new HOA amendment, a ban on aerial vehicles and aviation-related disturbances within community limits. The language was vague, but the target was crystal clear. She needed 67% of residents to sign. That's when the neighborhood divided. Some longtime residents, tired of Karen's reign, openly refused. Others, those who feared her wrath, signed reluctantly. But more surprising were the fence-sitters. People who'd once been indifferent were now curious, even supportive. They approached me in the evenings, some to thank me, others to ask if I'd really flown combat missions. One night, Ben, the guy with the Semper Fi cap from the HOA meeting, knocked on my door. Mind if I come in? We sat on my porch with 2 cold beers. He studied the Kiowa in the backyard, eyes distant. I flew Hueys in Fallujah, he finally said. You brought something back the day you landed that bird here. Something we haven't had in this neighborhood in a long time. What's that? Spine. He handed me a folder, photocopies of old HOA meeting minutes, budgets, emails. I flipped through them. Karen's fingerprints were everywhere. Rules passed without quorum. Fines issued without votes. Favoritism, spending irregularities, intimidation. She's been unchecked for too long, Ben said. You're the first one to scare her. I nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time we finish this. The next day, I filed 2 motions. 1. A petition to hold a special HOA election for board restructuring, citing Article 5.1 of the bylaws. 2. A formal ethics complaint against Karen for abuse of power, backed by over 24 resident signatures. It wasn't a helicopter that would bring her down. It would be the very rules she used against everyone else. And as fate would have it, the timing couldn't have been better. The quarterly HOA meeting was only 4 days away. And Karen had no idea what was coming. The community clubhouse buzzed louder than ever on the night of the quarterly HOA meeting. The folding chairs were all filled, some folks standing against the back wall, others spilling out the door. Karen had expected a routine affair, one where she would remind everyone of the importance of rules and quietly slide her anti-helicopter amendment under the radar. Instead, she walked into a crowd already whispering her name. I sat in the front row, arms folded, documents in hand. Ben stood beside me, the folder of incriminating evidence tucked under his arm. He nodded once. Showtime. Karen took her usual place at the center of the table, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She cleared her throat and tapped her gavel once. We'll begin tonight with a community concern regarding aircraft-related disturbances. I moved to introduce a motion for board re-election, I said, standing before she could finish. A wave of murmurs passed through the room like wind through dry leaves. Karen froze. You are out of order, Mr. Harlan. I'm citing Article 5.1 of the bylaws, I replied, holding up the highlighted page. With over 30 resident signatures attached, I walked forward and placed the folder on the table in front of her. Ben followed, laying down a second folder. And this is a formal complaint regarding ethics violations and procedural misconduct by the acting HOA president. Karen's face turned the color of an underripe plum. This meeting is not the venue for. This meeting, I interrupted, my voice louder now, is exactly the venue, as per the HOA charter you've enforced so relentlessly. Tonight, we vote. Someone clapped. Then another. And then half the room stood in applause. Karen glanced to her left, then her right, seeking backup. The board members beside her looked away. The man to her right, the youngest of the five, leaned to the mic and said quietly, "I second the motion." The vote was swift. Residents raised hands, names were checked, voices counted. The final tally. Yes to re-election, 38. No, 9. Karen sat stiffly, her fingers white-knuckled around the gavel. This is absurd. You people don't understand what it takes to maintain order. You're right, I said. You built a little empire. But this is a neighborhood, not your kingdom. The room went still as she stood. I resign, she snapped, eyes cold and unblinking. Effective immediately, she walked out without another word. The door closed behind her. There was a long pause. Then the room erupted. Neighbors I barely knew clapped me on the back. People cheered. Someone popped open a bottle of sparkling cider. The youngest board member, his name was Luis, turned to me and said, "We need a new president. You interested?" I smiled. Nah. I just wanted my Jeep back. The next morning, I rolled the Jeep out of the garage, parked it proudly in the driveway. No ticket. No citation. That weekend, I hosted a barbecue in my backyard, Jeep out front, Kiowa parked behind the shed like a resting dragon. Neighbors brought food, music played, kids laughed and ran through sprinklers. It wasn't just about vehicles anymore. It was about community, about reclaiming it. Ben handed me a burger and raised his drink. To raising hell. To restoring order, I said. And across the street, in the house with the perfect hedges and prideful signs, Karen's windows stayed shuttered. The skies were quiet, but I knew she could still hear the hum.